Hi, welcome back to COMM1160. This is week number 12. And this week, we're going to start talking about doing the final draft of your essay. I'm going to ask that you wait to start on your final draft until you receive a grade back on your rough draft. I did want to talk just before we get started a little bit about some course completion plans, because believe it or not, we are nearly done. You have two outstanding assignments now, a final draft of your essay and a final assessment. I've tried to be as flexible as I can with due dates because I know many of you are dealing with a lot of work. So you have a lot of assignments and exams coming up in other classes, and you're also trying to balance your real life with that too. So for the final draft of the essay, I've come up with something that I think will work for everyone. I'm going to give you two due dates for the final draft. The first due date is August 12th at midnight. If you submit before August 12th at midnight, you will receive full feedback on your final draft. But if you're not able to make the August 12th deadline, you can submit it by August 20th at midnight. If you do that, I will not have enough time to give you feedback before grades are due, so you will receive a number grade only. The only difference between submitting on the 12th and the 20th is the amount of feedback that you will get. It will not affect your number grade. So please pick what works best for you and your schedule. We're also going to be doing a final assessment, and the final assessment you're going to be completing online, and it's going to be held the week of October 16th. Next week, I'm going to review the content of the final assessment. So these next 2 weeks are really devoted to completing your rough draft and starting to get ready for your final assessment. We're going to talk about final drafts this week, and your final draft is really your showcase. So it's the piece that you're going to be submitting to show really everything that you've learned up to and including this point in 1160. But I want to make sure that it is a zero stress type of assignment. Remember that you have done all of the heavy lifting. You've done the outlining, you've written the rough draft. The final draft is really just about prettying up and editing and reviewing that rough draft. Given all the time and effort that you've put into this research project, from the research file, through the outline, through the rough draft, you want to make sure that your final draft represents your best work. And this means that you're going to need to take some time to revise and edit your paper carefully. I do want to warn you, I am quite gentle when I grade the rough drafts because I know it's rough. I know it's you thinking on paper. I know that you don't necessarily have the opportunity to catch every single punctuation error that you might want to add or delete from that rough draft. And I really do grade it as a planning document. So I look at it truly as rough work. The final draft, I am a lot stricter with. So I am looking for all sorts of things to be addressed in your final draft, and I'll talk about how to revise it. But I did want to give you a bit of a warning. So even if you receive 100% on your first draft, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be making any changes between your rough draft and your final draft. Everyone needs to edit. Everyone needs to revise. It's an important part of the writing process because it's your opportunity to take something very rough and turn it into something that is submission worthy. Something, again, that is your showcase, that shows off all of the work that you've done. So we're going to talk about different types of reviews. And what I recommend, although again, you don't have to follow my advice, but what I recommend is that you go through your paper several times and that you do different types of reviews each time you go through. This means that your brain doesn't have to multitask and try to do everything all at once as you're editing. The first type of review I'm going to suggest is an organization review. And with an organization review, what you want to do is you want to take a look at the essay itself and take a look at the different parts and the way that you've put those parts together. So take a look at your introduction. Does your introduction proceed clearly from its opening line through to your thesis statement? Then look at each body paragraph. Do each of them relate back to the thesis? And the ideas in the body paragraph, do those flow in a logical order? Take a look at your conclusion. Does your conclusion again summarize your main ideas and revisit your thesis? Right? What does your memorable and concluding statement look like? Then I go to the paragraph level and I take a look at each body paragraph. And I make sure that the topic sentence clearly states the main idea. I then take a look at all of the details that I've included and double check that all of those relate to the main idea. And then I take a look at whether or not I need to review any sentences or put in transitions to improve the flow of sentences. Once I've done the organization, then I take a look at what they call cohesion, and that's the way everything fits together. So I want to make sure that the opening of my paper connects to the broader topic. Okay, I want to make sure that any quotes that I've used or anecdotes, little stories or whatever that I'm telling serves a purpose. I then want to take a look at the body of the paper, and I want to make sure that I've included support from research for each main point. I want to take a look at quotations, okay, and how I've used any direct quotations. Did I include some introductory material before the quotation? Remember that you can never just drop a quotation in as its own full sentence. You always have to somehow weave it into a sentence of your own. So I want to make sure that I've done that. I want to take a look at the way that I've paraphrased, okay, to make sure that I've developed my own points in paraphrasing. I want to take a look to see if I need to add or change any parts of the paper that'll help the reader understand how certain information from a source is relevant. I want to make sure that I haven't overused sources. So do I have paragraphs where I've quoted too much? Normally we say that you should have only one direct quote per paragraph. If I have too many direct quotes in those paragraphs, maybe I want to revise those into paraphrasing. And then again, I want to make sure that my conclusion makes sense based on the rest of the paper. Okay, so watch for that. Look at how everything fits together. The next review that I do is a style review, and this is reviewing for the way that you're writing. You want to make sure that your paper avoids excessive wordiness. Some of us are a little wordier than others. I tend to be wordy, for example. So when I review, I go through and I eliminate extra words or fluff that I put in to try to make my writing a little leaner and meaner. I also want to make sure too when I'm revising that my sentences are varied in length and structure. So I don't want to have a whole bunch of long sentences or a whole bunch of short sentences. I want to have a nice kind of mix. I want to make sure that I've avoided using first person pronouns like I or we. And if I have used those in my rough draft, I want to revise those sentences to take them out. I also want to make sure that I've used the active voice whenever possible. And the active voice is a grammatical concept where you're talking about a thing doing something actively. I want to make sure that I've used very clear and straightforward language and that I've defined any specialized terms that might be unfamiliar to my reader. I want to make sure that the paper states point of view using a balanced tone, so neither too indecisive nor too forceful. Remember that your whole aim here is sharing information. So make sure that your style fits that sharing theme. Now, here's the tough one. I then want to do a review simply for grammar, mechanics, punctuation, usage, and spelling. I don't want to just rely on grammar check or spell check. I want to actually go through and make sure that everything works. Spell check and grammar check are great to catch some things, but remember it is a computer, it doesn't have a brain, so it doesn't catch everything. Remember, this is your final draft, so you want everything to be perfect. So watch for things like apostrophes and commas or anything else that you know may be a particular challenge for you. If you know that you frequently misspell a certain word, watch for that, okay? And really go over it with a careful eye. I find personally that I'm better able to proofread for this kind of stuff if I'm working from a paper copy as opposed to working on a screen. Now, that might be just because I'm old. I don't know. But I find I tend to miss little errors like that when I'm looking on a screen, but I will catch them if I'm using a printed out copy. So you might actually find that printing a copy before this stage of the review is helpful for you. The next thing I want to take a look at is my use of APA. And remember, I want to be very careful with APA because it is a requirement for all of the nursing papers that I'm going to be writing. So I want to make sure that in the body of my paper, every fact or idea that's taken from a source is credited to the correct source with an in-text citation. Every in-text citation needs to include the source author's name and the year of publication. And I want to make sure, again, that I've used the correct format for in-text citations. I want to make sure that every source that I've cited in the body of my paper has an entry on the references page. I want to make sure that each entry in my references section is indented on the second line and all subsequent lines. And I want to make sure that everything on my references page includes all the necessary information for that source type in the correct sequence. Okay, so I really want to take a very close eye at this. I want to make sure that my paper includes a running head if necessary, but I definitely want to make sure that my paper has that title page formatting according to APA rules. Again, I want to make sure that the margins of my paper are set at 1 inch, that my text is double spaced and set in a standard, so Arial or Times New Roman, 12-point font. Then I'm going to put it all together. Okay, so after I've gone through these reviews, and it's going to take significant time to do each review, I want to create my APA title page. Then I'm going to have the body of my essay, so I'll have my introduction, my body paragraphs, and my conclusion, and then my APA references page at the end. The editing and review can be a little arduous, okay? As I mentioned to you just a few seconds ago, it does take time, but it really helps improve the grade that you receive. If possible, when you're working in the future, I always recommend that you take at least 24 hours from the completion of a rough draft before you start editing and reviewing it. It's almost like your brain needs to forget what you did in your rough draft so that you can look at that draft with fresh eyes and be able to identify anything that isn't working, anything that you need to punch up, or anything that you need to correct for your final draft. The nice part about this course is that we have built in that kind of cooling off period. So you've completed your rough draft. Now you've taken some time away from it. So you should be able to get to the final draft, excuse me, with a really sort of set of fresh eyes to be able to identify anything that you need to change. If you need any questions answered about final drafting, please remember that our course chats will take place. I'm going to keep this video short so that you can spend the majority of your time this week really reviewing that rough draft, making sure that you make any changes that you'd like to, and then preparing it in that perfect final draft format. Remember again that we do have the dual due dates, so you have lots of time to work on this assignment. So you can decide to work on it in chunks. If you like, you can do each type of review on a different day because you do have enough time to actually spread it out that way so that you're not sitting down and trying to do everything at once. Whatever works for you as a writer is what you should aim for in completing this final draft. I wish you lots of luck with putting together this showpiece. In the next video, I'm just going to go over some requirements for the final draft again so that everybody's clear on what all the expectations are. I'll talk to you in our next video.